Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is the 5-minute silver chart provided by netdania.com. I'll provide a link below. And you can see that we did get the drop off that I was expecting after we crossed that critical trend line. You can see we dropped fairly sharply in the day today. Silver down a decent percentage. Now I've drawn an initial trend line that gives us the depth of this descent, or the slope of this descent, and the second trend line when we get a steeper slope. Now this trend line has actually met the price here, and we're just in the process of testing the trend line again. Normally when we get these sorts of declines, you will see the trend lines accelerate to the downside, and these tests will usually fail. So we're looking for a failure of this spot. The reason being that normally bottoms are put in significant volume spikes. Now this is kind of a spike, but the volume really isn't very significant. You can see the vast majority of the selling took place around in here, and this bottom didn't put in much of a spike. The spike that we have here appears to be probably a selling spike, and will probably roll back down farther. So we're looking, of course, for a good place to buy. It may be that when we touch below 31, that was the spot. I can't say for sure, but the main thing is that you want to buy the dips. That's the whole name of the game here. Now, there's so much news out there, I can't cover it all. If you remember the video that I did on MF Global, there have been a lot of comments and speculation about the relationship of the MF Global catastrophe and the takedowns in gold and silver that are now occurring. Some are speculating that they used that as an opportunity to take money from the people who are planning to take physical delivery. If you remember, Gerald Celente was on Alex Jones, absolutely going off on Corzine and the rest of them because his money was frozen. And of course he said, I think it was 100,000, he was talking about taking delivery of gold. That's kind of strange. I don't know. We're going to go and actually look at the physical sites where you can buy the metals, and I just don't know why anybody would want to take delivery of COMEX gold. It's such a difficult and convoluted process to actually take physical delivery on the COMEX when you can just bank wire some money over to Tulving and collect your metals. So speaking of Tulving, I was going through the sites for precious metals, and I went and checked Tulving, and I happened to notice that he had put a link to his YouTube channel, and he actually has a video of them unpacking some gold. So I want to play that real quick. These are 1 kilo bars that were purchased at the Royal Canadian Mint, and they've just received a shipment of them, and you can see that appears to be a bag that they received in the mail. I think if you look when he opens this bag up, I'm sorry, but we're actually lagging a little bit here. If you look when he opens this bag, there appears to be this label, looks like a shipping label. So it appears that they have taken this in the mail. It would be very interesting to see what the insurance is on something like that. Now you can see when he moves it how heavy this box actually is. It shakes the table. Did you see that? It just bounced the table up and down, and he has to struggle a little bit to move the box. You can see that how heavy it is. He can barely slide it. So now he's going to bring out the bars, and like I said, these are 1 kilo bars, which they'll flash it up on the screen here in a second. 1 kilo bars are 32.15 ounces of gold, and I believe I watched him unpacking this before, and I think he's putting these in stacks of 4, and he ends up with 8 stacks of 4 and 2 extra. So if I'm counting correctly, that gives us 32 bars, because that's 4 bars per stack and there's 8 stacks, and then there's 2 extra bars, so we get a total of 34 bars in this box. Now if you do the math on that, and I calculated the price of gold at $17.50, we're a bit below that, but I just did it for round numbers. I think if you do around $17.50 to $17.60 per ounce of gold, so you multiply your 32.15 times the price of gold, and then you're going to multiply that times the 34 bars that we have here, and the total comes to around $2 million. So you're looking at a box, and if you remember the video that we did on the shipment of gold for Venezuela, and I wanted to clarify that. Some of the viewers have pointed out that those cubes that were 15 by 15 inches were more like 2 cubic feet. I'm sorry, that would be, I've mixed up the numbers, but they were closer to 2. So the amount that I said was 1 per ton, metric ton. It really would be 2 metric tons for that cube. So if you remember the trailer that I showed you in that video, it would be roughly 2 of those. And also the number of gold that Venezuela holds, I think, is actually larger than the numbers that I gave. So it may be in the hundreds. So it may be anywhere from 1 of those trailers to 4 of those trailers. Nevertheless, the point remains the same. You could fly them, and someone linked an article that explained that, and the article said, the news article said, that they are actually going to be having 40 flights, probably sort of a safety measure to make sure, in case they lose one, I guess, then they only lose a percentage. So that's Tulving, and that's $2 million worth of gold. So you can see you can pack a lot of money in a very small place when you use gold. Now I wanted to jump over to the Tulving site, because we're going to be looking at deals, because as the price of silver drops, and I believe we're going to get more downside action here. It just doesn't look like a bottom to me. I think this is going to round and go down. I can't say how far, but you want to remember that when you're watching these charts, when you see tremendous drops on tremendous volume, very rapid price movements, you're probably going to want to pick a time to lock in and buy. Now, I've picked out my best picks, and I always do that when the prices are falling, because of course the name of the game is to buy the dips. And so I've done my picks on 4 different sites. I've chosen Tulving, Provident, APMEX, and Gainesville. On the Tulving site, I picked out the, let's see, I had that here. Well, the monster boxes of the Silver Eagles are $1.60. Actually, that's the buy price. They're $2.49 over spot. And that's pretty much it of the things that I like. probably the Canadian Maple Leafs. Here's 2012 sealed boxes. The problem with Tulving is there's a 500 coin minimum. So for the small people, it's very difficult to purchase from him. If you're a big player, you can go and buy a box, and you can get these 2012 sealed boxes of Canadian Maple Leafs for $1.99 over spot. Tulving always quotes in, oh, that's 10 or more boxes, so $205, but Tulving always quotes in prices above spot. So he puts the price of spot up at the top, or it's on his page. You can reference it, and you have to give him a call. So it's a little bit harder, and he only takes, I believe, bank wires. So it's a little bit harder for the small person to do business with him. The next one is APMEX, and if you remember, I purchased on the last dip when we hit 26, 27, and around 28, I think I jumped in and bought some of these Somali and African elephants. Now, APMEX has got those back in, and they've got about 6,013. So you can pick those up for as low as $35.56 on a bank wire. If we have a nice drop, you may be able to get them significantly cheaper. So they probably should continue to have a number of those. I don't expect 6,000 to go really that fast. And on Gainesville coins, I have gone through all the 1 ounces, and of course, you know, I'm not recommending the Eagles. The Eagles are always available. I have plenty of Eagles. I'm just recommending the ones that I have, the style of numismatics that I purchased in the past. And I'm not going to review the reason why I recommend numismatics. I've covered that in many videos. But the one I've chosen from Gainesville is this Fiji Taku. I did buy this. I bought some on one of the last dips. I can't remember when that was. This is actually cheaper than I got mine for significantly. I think I got mine for around 38, but $34.51 is a pretty good price, and if we get a good dip, we should expect to see these drop down. It's a beautiful coin, and I can assure you, because I bought them and I have them, that they are as beautiful or more beautiful than this image is here on the page. They're just a beautiful coin. So I highly recommend those coins. I think they're going to be very valuable in the future. And the last site is Provident Metals, and let me make sure I find that here. And they have quite a few that are out of stock right now, so I didn't really find a lot of the numismatics. For the bargain players and for the people who are looking for the best deal, I looked through these, and the one that stands out is this Buffalo Round. I like the Buffalo Round. It has the Indian on the front and the buffalo on the back. I've got a number of these. It's a nice coin, and you can get these for $32.65. So that's a great price. You can see we're trading at about $31.52. So that's just a little over $1 over spot. So those are my recommendations for dip buying. And of course, the name of the game is to buy the dip. A lot of people, I've noticed that the tenor of the comments on my page has been, I would say, somewhat more agitated than usual, and I think that's pretty normal. You definitely have to check yourself if you're buying silver and think about the reasons why you buy it. Because if you are convinced, as I am, that it is as valuable as it is, and it will be as valuable as it will be in the future, which will be much, much higher prices, then you actually have to look at these things as a gift. And as you see on some of these sites, a lot of them are out of stock. There's a ton of out of stock on Gainesville. There's out of stock on Tulving. There's a ton of out of stock on Provident. APMEX has a whole bunch that are not listed. So you begin to see the disconnect between the paper market and the physical market, and that's just telling you that the game is rigged. Obviously, if the price of something is falling, there should be a glut of it, but there isn't a glut of it. There's a shortage of it, or at least a bottleneck of it. The stuff should be coming out of their ears because nobody would want it. So obviously it's a game, it's a rigged game, and they're still playing their game. Now, the last thing I wanted to go to tonight is an article by Mike Krieger that was just posted and he has joined what we will call the conspiracy camp, which I think the camp is growing, and he calls this the three-card Monty. So I'll read some of this. I probably can't read all of it. He begins with some quotes, one from David Rockefeller, one from Dr. Johannes Keppel, and another one from Bloomberg. And it's talking about how this whole thing is planned and rigged. But we'll go into the bulk of the article here. Just like the confidence game, three-card Monty, through which people have been swindled out of their hard-earned money in alleyways and street corners all over the world for half a millennium, the previously sovereign nations of Greece and Italy have now officially been placed into the receivership of technocratic governments and are now in the final phase of their looting. It is truly sad to watch these proud nations whose territories form the very core of Western civilization be taken down one by one, but what is even more nauseating is watching the corporate media pundits, Wall Street analysts, and financial experts cheer the news because it is ostensibly good for markets. First of all, it doesn't take a genius to see that the people that screw up the most get promoted and advanced in the Western world's current political economic structure. The primary reason for this is that there is a very serious agenda of the powers that be, and that consists on using crisis to consolidate power in a one-world government, headed by a global central bank that issues a global fiat currency. People have been saying this on the fringe for decades and have been called conspiracy theorists the whole time, but if you look at how things are progressing today, you'd have to be asleep to not notice that the guys in charge are completely and totally determined to bring this sick, twisted dream into place. That is why the agenda moves forward, despite the repeated desperate cries of the citizenry for them to stop. Let's take a look at Mario Monti, the soft dictator that has been thrust upon the people of Italy by the powers that be. He is a member of the Bilderberg Group. He is the European chairman of the Trilateral Commission, a think tank founded by David Rockefeller in 1973, and is an international advisor to none other than Goldman Sachs. This guy was put into place by design. Anyone in Italy that thinks they achieved a victory by ridding themselves of Berlusconi, you better think again. You just got the biggest insider, crony, financial terrorist around put in charge of your country without having a say in it. Even for someone like me that expects these things, I am amazed by how badly Italy was just screwed. Speaking of the unreported coup that just happened in Italy, I will let my friend Jared Dillian of the Daily Dirt Nap add his 2 cents from his piece today. So I read recently that Italy wasn't going to have the elections because of quote-unquote market crisis or something like that. And I'm the last guy who should be writing about this since I know very little about political systems in any of the European countries. For example, how can you just announce or not announce an election? Aren't these things on a schedule? So already I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm worried about Greece and Italy that have chosen not to have elections to choose their leaders. I'm actually quite concerned about that. You can't use market crisis as an excuse to not hold elections. Even if elections take time and are messy, most importantly, don't produce the desired result, it is a part of the gosh darn democracy. And if they are going to suspend elections for this, then they can suspend elections for anything. Like, say, pretend Mario Monti is a closet dictator and they just put a guy in there who is never going to hold another election again. So this is a bad precedent. This is way worse than a bad precedent, but well said, my friend. Oh, and another thing, if you are looking at the gold market and wondering why it's so weak, stop wondering. In my opinion, all you have to do is look at Mario Three-Card Monty. Credit given to Gerald Celente for that name. If I were anyone in Italy that cared, I would be checking the gold in the vault every single day. I have zero doubt that Monti is letting the country's treasure out the back door by the ton in the name of global stability and ECB bond purchases. The backroom deals that are happening right now at the expense of the people of Italy have got to be completely off the charts. As I've said many times before, the reason Europe doesn't announce a solution is because there is no solution. They also know that the minute they announce massive monetization, gold and silver will go no offer and the jig will be up. This is also why the Fed hasn't announced QE3 despite their desire to do so. So the strategy is to announce nothing, sell sovereign gold behind the scenes, and perform all sorts of market manipulations behind closed doors. While the sheep in most nations will be completely unaware until way after the looting is over and they are left with chaos and then a real dictator, the leaders of nations of China, Russia, and others know exactly what is happening and will happily take Italy's gold and whatever Greece hasn't already sold without telling anyone. I love how leaders keep coming out with stuff like, we need to stop freedom of speech and we need to manipulate markets and we need to take your sovereignty away to create confidence. The worst part is people actually fall for this crap. On what planet does robbing someone, taking their freedom away, and saying you and your children will be slaves forever inspire confidence? Germany. How do you say sucker in German? No, seriously, I want to know. I mean, how about the quote from Merkel at the top? I mean, did David Rockefeller write that speech for her? I love how politicians are now openly out there offering their country's sovereignty in the name of 50 up points in the S&P 500. I seriously hope the Germans are buying three-card Monty's gold for their sake. After all, as Jim Rickards has stated, they will never see an ounce of whatever gold they were stupid enough to store in New York. That's all I have to say about the Germans. Ditch the periphery, and that includes you, France, or go down with the ship. Gut Nacht. The Ben Bernanke is Superman. Banana Ben Bernanke is Superman. Didn't you know? Oh, and on the side, he prevents all economic downturns from ever happening in a single bound. It's true. Didn't you hear about the speech he gave in from the military in Texas? What a sad joke. Yep, he was quoted as saying the following, quote unquote, I'm not a believer in the Old Testament theory of business cycles. I think that if we can help people, we need to help people, unquote. Wait, let's do that again. I'm not a believer in the Old Testament theory of business cycles. I think that if we can help people, we need to help people. Good heavens, I'll say, I'm not going to use the Lord's name in vain. Good heavens, this man is a maniac. And he is in charge of global monetary policy and the world's reserve currency. Good luck to you if you don't own gold. As my friend Tony Greer, if you aren't getting his emails, you better start, likes to say, time to hit the links. And he posts some links about the post office losing $5 billion, Jon Stewart making fun of John Corzine, and Goldman Sachs. And I'll read this one because this is amazing. Finally, the biggest joke of the day, U.S. banks. This article is a gem. It talks about how the big financial institutions don't break out CDS exposure by region because it might scare people. How about this line? Quote, as of September 30th, JP Morgan said it had sold $3.13 trillion of credit derivative protection and purchased $3.07 trillion. All good, I guess. No one loses. So it's crazy. The stuff that's going on is getting crazier by the day. The only thing you can do is stack physical silver. We're getting an opportunity here to stack some more. So I made my recommendations. I think that if you stick to those numismatics, you probably won't go wrong. They seem to just expand their premiums as the prices rise. I'm very happy with the ones I purchased. So we're rolling over to the downside. I fully expect that these lower prices to be tested. And if we do get 31 and 30, you may be able to pick up some of those coins for 32 or 33. And that would be a really good price. And we'll talk to you next time.